Thought Creators, the podcast for financial experts, brought to you by FAB.
Welcome to Thought Creators, the podcast that looks at the issues impacting the world of finance and takes a look at them through a very human lens. Brought to you by one of the leading banks in the region, First Abu Dhabi Bank. My guest today is Salil Ahuja, who is head of CVP with First Abu Dhabi Bank, and his passion is supporting SMEs and startups. So he's a very popular man. Salil, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you for having me here.
You're very welcome. I'm going to be super interested about today's conversation. We always start with the headlines that are catching my eye. And again, in your space, so many headlines around entrepreneurship right now. It feels like there's a real impetus and a wave behind startups and entrepreneurs. I saw one headline, which was the Dubai International Chamber just this week announcing its goal to try and attract 100 SMEs and 300 startups by 2030. You're obviously at the coalface working with lots of entrepreneurs.
In fact, in the recent article by Minister of Economy, they've announced that they're going to target to bring in 8,000 SMEs in next few years, and they are going to build 20 unicorns within this part of the world. I know Unicorn is a company which is evaluated greater than $1 billion. So you rightly said there's an impetus towards bringing in SMEs and developing the SMEs in this part of the world. And there are many right reasons to do that as well.
I mean, let's unpack that a little. I mean, what I've been seeing recently as well is that we've got unicorns kind of being created within this region rather than kind of importing a business model from outside, but actually unicorns spring up. And I talk to my daughter all the time about unicorns. She's 7, so she loves them. But why is it so important? 8,000, that's a big number. That's an ambitious target. Why is the UAE prioritizing the startup, the SME, the entrepreneur, these people that are chasing their dreams? Why has that become so important to the economy and the future of the UAE?
See, SMEs are always a building block of any economy across the globe. Now, if we talk about UAE, about 95% of companies existing in UAE are SMEs, and they contribute to 90% of employment in the private sector. Now, These are huge contribution numbers. And when it comes to GDP, SMEs contribute to 60% of the UAE GDP as per the latest numbers, right? And then we have all the right reasons to all, including government sectors and everybody who are living in this part of the world, to focus on SMEs and build up companies to grow up in this part of the world.
So that feels like 90%, that's an incredible number. Must be a significant amount of employment created in the SME space then, which sometimes we don't talk about.
Correct. So about 90% of employment is in SMEs, and not only in the recent years, but what they're taking it forward towards is if they're targeting to bring in about 8,000 more SMEs in this part of the world, this number would definitely grow up. And hence new opportunities, people coming in, the overall industry segment will boom.
So this is your focus. Your job title is head of CVP.
Correct.
Just give me a bit of, unpack what a head of CVP does, what your job is, and explain it to me as if I'm a 5-year-old.
Okay. So I know the title has been abbreviated as CVP, but it is Customer Value Proposition for the SMEs.
For the SMEs.
So I'm responsible for ensuring anything and everything which a customer would need in terms of banking requirements and non-banking requirements. That is what we call as beyond banking for SMEs in FAB.
So I'm an SME. What am I doing when I come in and sit down opposite you, Salil? What are we going to talk about?
So there are multiple things that we can talk about. So when you come to me, firstly, what you're going to talk about is the banking facilities, right? Mm-hmm. How do you ease your banking functionalities on your day-to-day banking capabilities? Secondly, the best and the most, the biggest question that we get is how do I get loans out of it? Right? And these are the initial banking terminologies or the discussions that we have with SMEs. But besides that, a lot of SMEs are now approaching us, like a lot of fintechs are approaching us, that how do they have a good idea, they have a brilliant idea, which is working in some other part of the world. How do they really fit that idea into the current regulatory environment so that it becomes a sellable product in this part of the world? And hence, which will help them to grow further in this.
Having gone on my own journey on that one, I wonder whether that puts you in the position where you have to sometimes have difficult conversations with entrepreneurs or dreamers who think they've got the next big thing, but it isn't quite there.
So honestly, you're right, and I have that conversation every day. At least one entrepreneur comes back to me and he challenges me that whatever solution they had, it's actually a brilliant idea. Let's be pragmatic about it. It's truly a brilliant idea, but then is it a workable idea in this part of the region? That's where we need to transform these SMEs. And it's at time people don't accept it, people don't want to believe it. And hence it takes time for them to transform their products and bring it back to this part of the world. But somebody who's really building up well along with us and as per the requirements of the local industry, they have a great chance of growing successfully very fast.
You're making me feel like that. It reminded me of that Jerry Maguire line, which is like, help me, help you. You're there basically to try and help them, but sometimes that requires giving them some hard truths about their projects. I've seen one almost like trend with startups, which is sometimes we have a good idea and we expect the market to fit our idea. Is your job trying to actually go, no, this is how we improve your idea so it fits with the market, and then we're going towards market fit, which is incredibly important to the sustainable success of an SME?
So you're absolutely right. So my job is to ensure that I strike the right balance between the things, the expectations versus the current market environment as well. Now, there are exceptions to this as well. There are really good ideas which we would have never even thought about. Mm-hmm. So and for those ones, we really go back and then work with the regulatory authorities to maneuver our way so that we can actually transform the segment into a new different world. But generally, few of those are the repetitive ideas, but which is applicable in other parts of the world and cannot be implemented exactly in the similar way. So we have to transform them. So there's a mix of both.
So it's almost like 9 out of 10 jobs in the UAE are startups. But then on the flip side of that, the common wisdom tells us that 9 out of 10 startups fail. What is it that you can do through your work to help an entrepreneur be in the 10% that succeed and thrive, as opposed to the 90% that fall by the wayside?
So honestly, we've started working aggressively on a platform which is going to go beyond banking. So when we talk about beyond banking, we are recently launching our SME rewards platform. Mm-hmm. The endeavor of launching of this platform is to ensure that we bring these SMEs along with the SMEs of the complementing businesses and with the corporates, so that they do not only hear from us, they hear from the right SMEs, they hear it from the right corporates, and they get an opportunity to connect and collaborate while playing golf. Because golf, while playing sport, it's the best time to collaborate. People are at ease and they're willing to listen and interact.
Well, all I can say is the amount of business I've got through people feeling sorry for me playing golf when they see how bad I am, it's always an icebreaker. What are, though, again, if we're drilling down, what are some of the common mistakes that we see these SMEs coming through? Or what are some of those requirements that the SMEs need to be able to succeed?
See, there are two key requirements. First, understanding of the regional regulatory requirements. That's the first primary and the sole thing that everybody needs to incorporate that. And the second one is the product fitment. When I say product fitment, they need to ensure that the product is suitable for the regional market. Mm-hmm. And it is not the ones which has been brought in and has been successful in other part of the world can be replicated or can be copied and pasted over in this part of the world. So there has to be a little bit of transformation that is required, a little bit of evolution of business models that has to be required in this part of the world. And then it makes it more successful. And all the SMEs who've been really, really successful in this part of the world, mm-hmm. if you really see the business models, they've actually transformed either the business model, their business model, or has challenged the operating model of the local entities, and which has actually helped them to take the business to the next level.
So I love real world examples. We often try and go there on the podcast. What have you seen that kind of came across your desk that you've seen grow from an SME to, I don't know if you've seen any unicorns, but what businesses are you looking at in this region, specifically the UAE, that you think they've done a really good job there and that other people should be looking to them as an example?
So there are several businesses. When we talk about businesses, there are businesses from logistics part. There are businesses from fintech industry who've really, really done well in this part of the world. I've seen some smaller solutions which has now been adopted across all the banks, right? These are actually the problem solvers. The issues which were there in this part of the world, they came out as a solution and they were able to take it up. So yes, you have unicorns coming up like Kareem as well in this part of the world, right? That's the biggest example we can talk about. And there are multiple such companies who are moving towards that road.
There's I thought two key words in that last statement I took away from that, which is problem solving. Is that a question you always ask yourself when these business proposals come across your desk? Is it what is the problem that they're solving? Is that what SMEs need to focus on?
Absolutely, yes, because that's where the adaptability comes and fits into the structure. Because so let's be realistic about it. If I have a problem and if I see a solution, somebody selling me a solution to that particular problem, right? I would jump onto it. I will quickly jump onto it, even if it is not 100% solution. If it's matching to 70-80% of my requirements, at least I'm going to go and adapt to that. I'm going to go and invest into that particular myself. I'm going to go and invest into that solution as well. As a banker or as an individual, I would rather go and complement that business and try and then tailor-made it as per my further requirement. But if it fits my requirement, I'm definitely going to adapt to it.
So for anyone tuning in, I mean, we're never going to get this kind of opportunity again with this kind of insight. When that business proposal comes into your in tray, what's the checklist? What does that look like? What are you looking for in terms of fundamentals, even though sometimes it might only be a 1-pager or a 2-pager, but what are you looking for to give you confidence that yes, we are going to either A, invest or B, lend to?
So there are ways to see into this component. Like, there are structured companies. So we're not talking about the structured companies who are we talking about the regular lending propositions, which we get support from government entities as well. But there are companies where we talk about the micro SMEs, right? Where we're just starting the new startup. So we look at their ideas, we look at their business models and their future business models. Then we compare it with the existing ecosystem available to nurture, to let that business grow. If that ecosystem supports that business model, that is where we try to see and get our investments into those businesses.
Micro SME. Tell me the difference between micro SME and SME. And is there an army of micro SMEs that are rising? It feels to me like, that those individuals, particularly during the pandemic, who decided to follow their dreams, me being one of them, that there's more of those coming. Are you seeing that? How is micro SMEs becoming more of an area of focus for you?
No, this is a tough one. Honestly, a micro SME is the one which is transforming towards an SME. Now, the SME can be classified into 3 different segments: micro, small, and medium.
Right.
Micro are usually, now if we talk about the generic language, if we talk about the general matrix, that would not be the right ones. Micro SMEs are the ones who are single-owner companies or smaller companies who are trying to build up or who have a smaller business model up to a smaller turnover companies, right? Okay. Now, micro SMEs have always been a talk of a town, but nobody's actually vested their interest and have been supporting into them. In fact, Fab has taken a leap ahead where we've launched our micro SME lending proposition along with Amazon to support their supply chain. And it has recently been done, and we did a test pilot and we were successfully able to lend to 25 micro SMEs during that propositions. And it has been really successful.
Now, where were you when I was setting up? That seems to be, sometimes that is an issue, isn't it, for the micro SMEs? Because they're just getting going. That access the bank account, that process they need to go through. Is that something you're looking at? And that seems to be, to me, to be a massive gap in the market. If we've got a rising base of micro SMEs, they're going to require banking facilities. That seems like flipping things on its head. That's a problem you can solve.
Correct. So you're absolutely right. What happens is, before the e-commerce industry picked up, it was very tough to identify micro SMEs. But post e-commerce industry which has been picked up, like Amazon, is something which gives us an exposure to a lot of micro SMEs. We can understand their supply chain. We can understand their payment cycle. Now it's easier for me to build up association with these kind of e-commerce platforms and drive propositions which can support micro SMEs, because now I see what products are they selling, right? I'm just giving you a basic example. What products are they selling? How much are they selling? What is the customer's feedback on those SMEs, which was not available to me until like a small shop which was open. I don't know how do I track, how do I used to track their sales, how do I track their customer complaints, how do I track everything. Now with the help of this e-commerce industry growing up, it's becoming more and more easier for us to be a problem solution solver for these micro SMEs.
Because you can track their metrics, their sales, their supply chain,
and then we can complement their business models as well, right? We can give them the right banking products which they want. Earlier, it was just a standardized product for every micro SME which is existing in this part of the world. But now what we can do is we can create tailor-made products for them, even in the micro SME segment.
Because it seems interesting. It seems like it could be an area that has possibly traditionally been overlooked, because you look at it and go, it's one or two people. But actually then, are you seeing particularly, and maybe this has inspired it, those one or two person businesses with this push for entrepreneurship, when you add up all those one or two people businesses, all of a sudden you've got quite a serious market segment.
We've started looking into this micro SME segment very aggressively. We're building and transforming our propositions, targeting these micro SME segments, because these micro SME segments also contribute towards a lot towards that pyramid of SMEs, right? The numbers of economy we were talking about, the economy numbers we were talking about, these are the micro SMEs. If we support amicably, they are the ones who are going to grow to small, medium, and these corporates and the unicorn. One of them can be a unicorn very soon,
Well, obviously one day I will be a unicorn. Tell me, my daughter would love that. Tell me, you said you were, examining what SMEs needed. So tell me about that process. Have you been sitting down and listening with SMEs about what they need? And then tell me about what you've got coming down the line at FAB to support entrepreneurs.
Okay, so we've done multiple surveys with our customers, not only our customers, but the SMEs in this part of the world. We've categorized the requirements of SMEs into two different broader categories, right? One is the banking needs, which is a standardized banking needs, and the other one is the beyond banking needs. But the expectation of the SMEs is to support is a support from the financial institutions like ourselves to support them beyond banking as well. So let's first talk about banking. Whenever we talk about banking needs of an SMEs, all they need is an easy and a convenient banking platform so that they can manage their day-to-day operations and their business management. Because let's be realistic about the fact that SMEs have to do themselves their own, or everything on their own, right? They have to focus on their business development activities. They are themselves managing their finances, and they have to make their own coffee as well, by the way.
Tell me about it. My coffee stinks.
So that's what I was trying to tell you. So our job is to ensure that we give them a platform which gives them an easy and convenient banking operations, and they don't have to be bothered about their basic banking needs. And we have all those products and propositions available for our SMEs when it comes to FAB, right? And when it comes to lending, because every company would require some component of lending in one or the other shape or in one of the other products during their life cycle, right? During the entire life cycle, they would require loans at multiple levels. And there could be scenarios, right, where so firstly, we have a complete platform of lending propositions. We have a segment-based, and we have an industry and sub-industry segment-based targeted lending propositions. But beyond that, there are certain segments, because of our risk matrices, because of the regulations that we adopt, we cannot go and lend to certain companies or certain SMEs. For those, what we do is we have our associations, or we proactively participate in government initiatives, right? All the government lending initiatives, the ones which was like it recently launched, which was with EDB, Tawazun. Previously, we had we were able to give a lot of loans under the Gadan scheme of the UAE government. So all these things have helped and built up towards the banking needs. So when it comes to banking, we have a complete platform. We're supporting them in all the prospects. As I said, we're getting into a micro SME lending as well. But now when it comes to beyond banking, that's where we've started taking a step ahead. That's where we're taking a leap towards the next component, which we want to support the SMEs beyond our banking needs, beyond the commercial needs, right? As we said, we are launching a rewards platform. The rewards platform is for connect and collaboration for all the SMEs. They can play golf, get connected to SMEs and the corporates, as I said. Beyond this, one of the businesses which is more prone to virus attacks, which is the cyber attacks, is the SMEs. So we are ensuring that during our rewards platform or within our rewards platform, we are ensuring them for the cyber insurances, right? The travel insurances. Beyond whatever all the other rewards platform gives, you usually get a reward platform of those discounts and those restaurants and all those things. We have those as well.
Yeah.
But what we're focusing here is connect and collaboration. We're talking about the cyber insurances. We're talking about the travel benefits. We're talking about something which is going to take care of their nurturing of the business, their learning and development programs.
That's interesting as well, because I mean, I love that old Donald Rumsfeld quote about, there are known unknowns and unknown unknowns. And as an SME and as an entrepreneur, often there's things you don't even think about when you're going in there. You're going in, you've got your product or you've got your business or you've got your service, and you're just trying to A, get customers, and B, deliver. And things like, how I manage my budget, how I manage my pipeline, how I manage the annual expenses, plus cybersecurity. I mean, Absolutely. 9 times out of 10, I imagine a lot of SMEs are like, what? I wasn't even thinking about that. So Absolutely. How important is that educational bit? When we talk about that 90% who fail, how important is that bit of education about, well, these are actually the building blocks that are going to keep you going, whether it's be about managing that pipeline or about managing, not just your revenue, but what actually gets paid, your accounts receivables, that sort of things. Because a lot of us walk into this field and, we might be experts in the one thing we dream about doing, but we're not experts in actually running a business.
You're absolutely right. So as I said, beyond banking, that's where we want to support our SMEs. We've understood by talking to them. We've understood by doing various surveys, various workshops, various sessions with our customers. Right. That one thing which is very critical is let them focus on their business development activities. There has to be somebody who's going to take care of all this, their learning and development. Mm-hmm. We give them a platform and easy access to where they can easily log in and learn about the businesses, right? They can interact and learn from people, right? Besides that, we take care of this insurance components. So there is a component of learning on the cyber insurance, how to safeguard themselves from from these current virus attacks and from all the hacks which they're going through currently. And even though there are still chances for them to get trapped into those things, we are backing them up by cyber insurance, right? We're backing them up by travel insurance. We're backing up with their employment insurances as well for the employees as well. So all these components have to be built up. So we call it as a beyond banking ecosystem. Mm-hmm. What we're working is to build up a beyond banking ecosystem, and we are naming it as a SME rewards platform. So this rewards platform is going to launch soon, and stay tuned to it. There are going to be much, much more things which are going to get added to it as well. I don't want to spill all the beans as of now.
Oh, come on, give us some exclusives. No, okay, that's cool. If I look globally, and we often like to talk about kind of predictions moving forward, we see, access to funding, and if you look at the US, you look at the UK, there's a bit of gloom and doom, particularly around the economies back there, talk of recessions, that sort of thing, which is often then when investment and access to funding dries up. But then we had your CEO, Hannah Rastamani, talking about this region faring better. What's your optimism in terms of the SME opportunity moving forward? Because it feels like this part of the world is still a massive opportunity.
Absolutely. In fact, I would say it the other way around. We've just started out working on this particular part of the segment, right? And there is immense opportunity for this segment to grow and to contribute further to this economy. So if the UAE economy has to grow, we have to ensure that this particular segment is nurtured well and developed well.
One last point I'd like to talk about, which is something which I always think is like, it's one of these things like, we always say it's never too early to start saving for your pension. We've had Sharjah, your Chief Sustainability Officer, talking about ESG being a license to operate. And we think about big companies and we think about corporations. How important is it for SMEs to start thinking about that? I mean, we've got COP28 coming into the UAE in 2023. Is this something that should figure, almost from day one as part of the plans? Like how is that SME going to embrace ESG? And what does that look like in terms of the SME level?
ESG has always been a building block of any SME, but nobody has really seriously thought about it. Mm-hmm. now is the time when people are seriously thinking about it. And the reason being, earlier investors, now when we talk about investors, what does an SME look for? Is the investor, right?
Yeah.
Is the exposure to investors. Earlier investors were not looking at ESG as a component. But if you read the recent reports, 2/3 of the investors are looking in for ESG component before they take the decision of the investment into any industry. And hence it is becoming really vital and critical for all the SMEs to take a leap or to move ahead towards building up and incorporating and imbibing ESG initiatives within their business model. And it is also critical to build up a long-term sustainable business, right? And hence to build up a long-term sustainable business, it is important that they have imbibed the ESG initiatives into it.
So would your advice be to those startups that are doing their two-pager, if it's a two-pager business model, to stick a third page on there where they start thinking about actually how they implement ESG in? Because A, they'll be better businesses, but also have better access to investment. Is that one?
And I would suggest the second page should be, or the first page should always start from ESG.
Right.
Because it's very, very critical as of now.
Well, how often are you seeing that, though? I mean, you're seeing, you can tell me how many applications you see a day, but how often do you see businesses coming to you that are really putting ESG at the forefront, at a startup level or at an SME level? Is it increasing?
Absolutely. In fact, I've seen a paradigm shift into this. So if we were talking about few years before, SMEs were not focusing on it. Majority of the SMEs were not focusing on it. But now there are certain companies, there are a lot of evolution which has actually started off in thinking of the SMEs. And I said it's a paradigm shift. If you see, majority of the companies who are giving us the business proposals, starting from any industry, from a retail industry towards a fintech industry, everybody is focusing on ESG.
Wow.
And hence there has been a clear shift in the entire approach how the SMEs are looking the ESG into.
So if you're kind of a startup that's coming to it with a business model that doesn't have ESG woven in, you're sort of kind of starting with one leg tied behind, one leg tied behind the other, or a stone on it. You're going to lag behind all the other people out there that are competing for the investment but have got ESG in there.
Absolutely. And that is the only advice I can give everybody, right? That this is something which will restrain or refrain you from growing rapidly up. And if you really want good investors investing in your businesses, definitely you need to incorporate that.
Can I pick your insight on that as well? Because you mentioned good investors. And I heard the phrase sometimes that sometimes it's not just about money, but it's about the right kind of money. How important is that for SMEs when they make their decisions?
See, honestly, it's their idea which they want to get it nurtured, right? So hence it is very critical to find up the right investor, somebody who can still let them do the business, take it to the next level, and helps them to support and grow. Doesn't want to come here just to resell that product, right?
Okay, so that's kind of one of the things you look at doing then, is it? Where
No.
where you said like if we come back to what you're saying, it's like, right, you've got a great business idea. I'm not going to take control of it, but I am going to try and help you get it to a point where it's got market fit. As opposed to an investor who might be saying, right, I just want to take your business idea and do the wrong thing with it.
Absolutely not. So we're going to help the companies to build them so that they get the business model corrected and adapted towards the regional requirements and to get the right investors into it.
How busy are you right now, Salil?
Extremely busy.
How busy do you expect to be next year and the year after and the year after? Well, I mean, if we if we're forward looking, what do we think about the SME?
I love to see my calendar. You don't have a space or a gap out there. For next few years, I don't think so we'll have a Saturday or a Sunday off as well. Because that's where the boon of the industry is, which is the SMEs.
Great. And then let's go closing piece of advice for SMEs. Either the things you think make them stand out, or the things that you think, just to wrap up, the common mistakes that you see where you go, look, if you're going to do it, then do this.
Firstly, focus on building up a long-term sustainable business. That should be the ideal focus. Ensure that you're meeting the regulatory requirements and you are building a product which is suitable to the regional market.
Can I ask one last question? and this kind of stems from, I was fortunate enough to be in a conversation with Deepak Chopra recently, and he said he sees a lot of startups that before they've even started, they have their exit strategy. And that's what it is. It's about building something that they can pour money into, pour users into, and then flip it. Is it time that we threw away the hockey stick?
See, it entirely depends, and that's where we need to get into when it comes to our job and responsibilities. We need to ensure that we pick up the right people whose ideas is not to just quickly exit the market, but to ensure that they take and nurture and the business to the next level. And hence, only then we'll be able to build up unicorns. Otherwise, we'll see a downward trend coming up in this economy very soon.
Because it feels like any of those unicorns that you've seen created, there always seems to be this appetite to get rich quick, which is human nature. But is that not what leads people to become unicorns? It's about building sustainable businesses.
See, that's not wrong at all. Becoming rich is not, thinking about to be a rich is not, it's not wrong, because along with that you bring up the entire industry up, right? Because it brings a lot of money into this in circulation, right? When you become a unicorn, you increase employment, you add to economy, but ensure that the endeavor is to add to economy and not just to yourself.
Add value.
Add value.
Well, you have definitely added value to this conversation today, Salil.
Thank you,
and
Scott.
thank you very much for joining us. If you've enjoyed this conversation as much as I have, then please hit subscribe to follow more from the Thought Creators podcast. Once more, Salil, thank you very much for joining us today.
Scott. Thank you for having me here. Thank you.
Thought Creators, the podcast for financial experts, brought to you by FAB.